Welcome. My name is Tijs Koerts. I'm a chemist from background. I've been raised in large chemical companies like DuPont, GE Plastics and LyondellBasell. I'm also leading the European Process Safety Center, which you see the logo over here. EPSC was founded after the Bhopal incident and provides a platform for the chemical industry. We are a legitimate network that is allowed to work together, and we focus on industrial best practices. A few of the topics that EPSC is working on are listed here. And to give you a flavor, we talk about the human performance, which is very important for process safety. Sometimes an operator makes some mistakes and an incident with hazardous chemicals happens. And then we try to discuss how we can avoid these incidents, how we can avoid these leakages. Digitalization. Digitalization is very important also for process safety. It's the advantages that digitalization tools can bring to enhance process safety. That's being discussed in one of the working groups from EPSC. SQRA stands for Semi-Quantitative Risk Analysis. Here we benchmark LOPA techniques between the chemical companies and also look into their risk matrix, what kind of criteria they use to reduce their risk. We have an active pharma working group that discusses the hazards around dust and statics. They also have the pharma process safety fundamentals. And it's an active working group because the pharma companies have a little bit their own characteristics in terms of smaller reactors and specific reactions. CHEF and RAS stand for Chemical Engineering Fundamentals, and this is a set of formulas that describe the effects of leakages. And these are the hazards related to explosions, toxic clouds and pressure waves. And RAST is the tool which is being developed that helps you to analyze those hazards quickly with a kind of Excel spreadsheet. Chemical hazard assessment is a new working group that is active where we analyze the reaction hazards and reaction heats before starting building a plant. Before start doing the HAZOP, you need good information, you need good chemical information, and only then you can do these hazard analysis well. And the practices that is being used is being discussed in there. Finally, we have the process safety fundamentals, which is a set of fundamental principles to avoid leakages in operations, and hope you have seen these by now. The topics of today is discussing about incidents and how do we effectively learn from incidents. And one of the observations is that incidents do repeat. If we have a large incident, very often it has happened in the past, and apparently we have not learned enough from it to avoid the incident. I give you two examples here. What you see is an oil terminal where incidents are being formed, and you see three pictures there of tanks, of large oil tanks that are in flames. And if you wouldn't know which picture was what incident, it would be hard to estimate the right picture, which one belongs to which incident. But what you see here is one which happened in Buncefield in 2005. Many people remember this, the big clouds that came from that oil terminal. There was an overflow from a tank that got ignited, and the whole terminal got into flames. 3 years later in Jaipur, India, a similar incident was a large gas cloud on a terminal was formed from a leak. It was ignited, a big explosion was there, and the whole tank farm disappeared. And a year later, again in Puerto Rico, a tank farm had an overflow, and that was ignited by a truck. And also there we saw that it was the whole tank farm was lost. So very similar incidents reoccurring. For ammonium nitrate, we have seen a couple of incidents. Ammonium nitrate is being stored, often in very large quantities, as it is being used as a fertilizer. People like to use it to have it available in large quantities. And here we have seen incidents across the world as well. One in Toulouse in 2001. You see the crater there. If ammonium nitrates explodes, it's really a detonation, and you really have a very severe explosion, and you end up with a crater. 30% of the windows in the city of Toulouse did break down during that incident. So a major catastrophe for the city, and you can imagine that the site was not rebuilt afterwards. Tianjin, 2015 in China, a similar situation where ammonium nitrate was stored in a large storage facility and got ignited by a fire, and a big crater was created in that situation. Many people died, major catastrophe there, and huge amount of damage. And finally, people, if you remember, not long ago in Beirut, ammonium nitrate was stored in the harbor, and in an area where it shouldn't be, but it was there for quite a while. A fire broke out, ignited the ammonium nitrate, and a big explosion occurred, killing many people and creating a disaster in the complete city. So you see, major incidents do repeat, and this is not over hundreds of years. This is all in this century, so it's a reasonable short period in time. And people ask, why do we not learn effectively enough? Let me go to a few barriers that I see that are barriers in effective learning. The first thing is the legal department. Legal is getting stronger and stronger in chemical companies, and people feel whatever legal says is the truth, and we need to bound legal. Nobody wants to be illegal. But people in legal will tell you that as soon as there's an incident, give the information to us, and nobody is allowed to tell anything about the incident. We keep the data secret, and within our company we will not share about it. Legal is determining that. That's a pity, because there's no legal rule that tells you that you cannot share about incident. Incident information, it is a decision of the company whether they share about that or not. Now, whether it's smart or not to tell about it is your own decision, but keeping it for years confidential is blocking learning, and you see what the consequences of that can be. The public opinion is an issue. In the old days, people in the public opinion were accepting that sometimes something went wrong, and were trying to accept the consequences out of that. Public becomes more active in expressing their opinions and becoming even more aggressive in doing that, and companies have become afraid of that. And that's a reason that sharing information with the public is something which companies have become hesitant on. There's a mistrust between the public opinion, and also it doesn't work good both ways. But at least it's a barrier in sharing openly about hazards, about incidents. And finally, there's something which is called pride managers. Managers like to share their successes. Managers do not like to share their incidents and bad things. And that's really everywhere. In my whole career, I've seen only one time an incident where a senior business leader said, I want to use this incident to share openly with everybody in the industry. And that was somebody when a plant in a TFE plant in Germany exploded, making Teflon. That explosion was used and say, I never want this explosion to happen again, because it's bad for industry. It's bad for our business, and it can happen everywhere. So I don't want to do that. Of course, that site couldn't produce for a year and a half, and that was a very big impact on their business. After a year and a half, they had lost their customers. But anyway, this manager said, please come to us and we will share openly all the key aspects, why this incident happened and so on. That happened, but it's the only case where I've seen a manager be able to actively learn in that open way. EPSC has found a format to share about incidents, and the key thing is we do that in learning sheets, and that's each month we present about a topic that we like to share with you as openly and as possible. It needs to be easy, and it needs to be on a hands-on case. So it is about raising the awareness on an incident. And it's not about how many people died, how big the consequences were. It is about how good are the learnings. What can we learn from that? It's always related to a chemical release. And of course, you want to describe the release and discuss what you can learn from that. It doesn't matter where the release happened. It doesn't matter at which company it happened. It doesn't matter when it happened. We want to keep this anonymous. There's no shame, no blame in the release, in the incident. And that, of course, makes it more easy for people to talk openly about a learning of a potential of an incident or a near miss. It's a story with a photo. We need a photo, you need a visual, and you need to explain quickly what happened, and a photo tells very quickly what happened. And then what we do is we discuss the relevant aspects as well as the things, the barriers that should have been in place or could avoid to avoid such incidents. And that's of course the key thing. And this one needs to be discussed with your people. It's the intensity of the discussion of these key aspects that will create the learning effect. Further, we make them easily accessible. It's a single page, it's easy to read, very little text, and they're available in local language. So we translate them into over 20 languages and make them available for you. They're all available each month on the website of EPSC, epsc.be. I want to give you a few examples of these and discuss them with you. So looking to this is something that most of you will recognize. Here you see a tank which imploded. And people say, well, you must be pretty stupid to have your chemical tank, which is made out of metal, to get that imploded. And what people do not realize is how easy it is to get a tank implosion. I mean, you need only 50 millibars under pressure to get a tank imploded. And that basically means with sucking with your lungs, you can vacuum that tank very, very easily. That's the first thing that you need to realize. And why is that tank, even when it is built out of metal, so sensitive? That's because of the surface area. The surface area is huge, and that is why the force on the tank is large, and that is why this implosion is so easy. These tanks are never built for vacuum resistance, or very, very seldom built for vacuum resistant. They are atmospheric storage tanks, and that is why we have these incidents. I've seen major chemical companies that say, hey, each year we have 10 of these tanks, so they have a tank of the month. So it's worthwhile to understand a little bit what are the key aspects to avoid it. And one of the things you see, of course, if it's an atmospheric tank, it needs to breathe openly to the atmosphere. And that is what you see there, the pipeline to suck in the air, so to avoid the tank gets vacuumed. And then you see a number of things where things go wrong. Many reasons can be that thing is blocked. First of all, it can be undersized. That was the case in this case. So it was only sized for a certain airflow getting in there. They steamed out this vessel. The temperature drop was fast, and that is why the air inflow needed to be higher than was allowed by the pipeline, and that is why the tank got vacuumed. But also realized small blockages, like a bird's nest puts a nest in there and you end up with a tank like that. You can have chemicals which condense in there or solidify in there, and the tank ends up like that. There are many scenarios which you can think of where this thing gets blocked, and then a plastic bag has been many cases where people say, let's avoid rainwater. A plastic bag avoids the air to get in and causes the tank to look like that. Make sure you discuss these things, and it's very helpful. I think each week in the world we vacuum a tank. This is another learning sheet about a case which happened in India during Corona time. During Corona time, people were not allowed to get on site, and chemicals were put in their storage tank. And this was a polystyrene facility, so they put their monomer, which is the styrene monomer, in the tank. And you see the molecule written down next to me. Styrene monomer has the intrinsic property to react with itself to form a polymer. And if it does that, it generates heat. And if it generates heat, the temperature rises, and if the temperature increases, the reaction speed is being increased. And that is how it goes and gets into a runaway reaction. Initially slow, but then faster and faster and faster when the temperature rises. When the temperature rises, the molecule also starts to evaporate. And that's what you can see. The tank has some clouds around there, and that is the styrene monomer. And you see it's a heavy molecule because the clouds are dropping to the ground. They're splitting over the area and getting into the neighbor areas in the area where a lot of people were living. And that's what you see on the photo left of the cloud. And that molecule happens to be very toxic. So the people in that area got poisoned by the toxic molecule, and eventually 12 people lost their lives. Here, the couple of key learnings, of course. Styrene monomer, you need to store it. Why does the molecule start to react? It's in an initiation reaction, which can include oxygen, but at least radicals. So you need to add some radical scavengers there to keep the concentration of the radicals low. The other thing you can do is measure the oxygen, keep the oxygen low. There are, of course, a lot of things you can do on temperature control. If you see that the temperature goes up, that's not good, and you need to be able to cool down quickly and avoid the incident from happening. And finally, if you have an incident like that, then you need to be able to inform the neighbors quick enough and keep them out of these hazardous clouds that eventually will blow away. So styrene monomer is a molecule that needs attention, and that's the takeaway. One more item, which I'm sure we make each week a mistake somewhere in the world, which is working at the wrong location. Here you see the consequence. There is we have two reactors. One is in operation, one is in cleaning mode, and that needs to be cleaned. And when it's in cleaning mode, we like to remove the spool piece, the piece of metal pipe below the reactor, and be able that the cleaning water can fall on the ground. So there's somebody who gets the task and say, hey, please remove that part. And he's good in bolting. He goes to the reactor and removing the spool piece. But what you see he's doing, he's removing the spool piece at the wrong reactor, in the reactor which is inactive. Now here we were lucky because it was discovered in time and there was still a valve between the spool piece and it didn't happen into a major catastrophe. But other people know that there are reactors where we opened it and, for example, with PVC, and we had a major catastrophe killing several people. So here you see the big danger of working in the wrong location, creating a chemical leakage potentially, which can then cause major harm. It's very hard to, it's not easy to avoid working in the wrong location because people say, yeah, we have a permit to work, we tell people where to work and then we send them to the location. But these are the contractors. This is not our operators themselves. These are the contractors which do not know the area that well as an operator. And they can end up at the wrong location very easily. So in these critical tasks, it's very important that you don't send a contractor and say, hey, good luck and unbolt whatever you need to unbolt. You need to go with that person in the field and make sure that the right location is being unbolted. And if you don't do that, these incidents will happen. So that's a very critical learning, and we have seen mistakes in this area on all sides. Validate the right location in the field. Let's do one more. This is an interesting one as it is very complicated and as you know, maybe a key situation. This happened on the refinery during the startup where a large gas cloud of C5 did escape. And we all know the incident at BP, at the Texas City refinery in 2005, where we had that situation during the startup. 20 tons of a C5 was being released, and that was ignited. We had an explosion, and 15 people lost their lives. Here we have a similar situation where during the startup, 25 tons, so even more, of the C5 was being released, forming an immense gas cloud in the area from a flare system. The only difference is that it wasn't ignited and you're not aware of it. But the principal learning is as big as was in BP Texas. So what happened here? C5 was being released during the startup from a PSV which by accident was opened. And the C5 was flowing to the flare in large quantities. And C5 has a boiling point here, what does it say? Just above ambient, 26 degrees centigrade. So a part of it is gas, and if you cool it down, it gets liquid. So it's flowing as a gas to the water tank, and then in the water tank it's cooled down there and it's getting a liquid. And then in the tank it's replacing the water. And that is why through the water lock the C5 can exit the system and actually flow to the sewer. And that was happened. So a huge gas cloud of C5 was formed, and luckily it did not ignite. So it's a very special case, but at least I would like you to learn from it and to see that if you have these kind of situations, how do you protect yourself against that? These are the process safety fundamentals that I have talked about in the beginning. It's 18 logos, 18 typical situations where people are in a critical hazardous situation where you can create a dangerous situation which results in a leakage or which results in an explosion. You've seen the logos. What we have done for a year, that at each incident where we say which of these fundamentals contributed to the incident. And actually, at our incident analysis, we also now do the analysis and say, hey, let's get an understanding on statistics, which of these are involved a lot, And we get a more a better feeling about that. But also on the incidents that we have reviewed, we have added these process safety bundles for a year. What happened here in this case is at the refinery we started up a new unit. And the unit got a pipeline, and we would like to bring naphtha to the unit through an existing pipeline. So we cleaned the pipeline and then put the naphtha in there. But what we forgot to do here is a drain was left open, and you see that. This drain was being left open when we transported the naphtha to the unit. And the naphtha flew out in the trench and it got a major cloud, and then it got ignited. And you can imagine if you have an initial fire in a pipeline system, in a refinery, that can become a major disaster, and it became a major fire and issue for that refinery. Now there are two principles here which can help you. And the first one is walk the line. And walk the line is the principle that before you start a transfer, you confirm that everything is all right. Before you start a pump, before you start a transfer, you validate that everything is all right. And then if you do that physically by a walk the line inspection, you especially look to things where drains are still open, where valves are in the wrong position. So that's a good principle to use. Another principle is before you put a hazardous chemical in a system which has been opened for maintenance or cleaning, you first do a leak test. You validate that your system is leak tight before you put a hazardous chemical like naphtha in it. And that's a good principle, and it really helps you if you do that. Here, that was not done because if you do a pressure hold test with nitrogen, you very quickly found out that you had a big opening, and that's not good. Typically what you do, you bring a couple of bars of nitrogen in there, you wait for 15 minutes, and if the pressure doesn't drop, you understand your system is leak tight. And only then you bring hazardous chemicals in there. These principles should be known and should be adapted on major sites. So here you see the key learnings that very straightly relate to these process safety fundamentals. Finally, EPSC has brought all the learnings from, or the first 54 learning sheets into a booklet. That booklet is available to you, and it's available on the website, epsc.be. It's easy to use because there's also an index. So if you have a certain topic that you would like to discuss, look to the index, take the relevant learning sheet and use that in your toolbox or whatever, in your safety talk on your site. And the discussions on these will really help you to raise awareness and avoid incidents. I thank you for your attention, and EPSC is our shared responsibility to protect society together. Thank you for your attention.